Before we begin today's show, your friends at Friends Talking Nerdy urge you to head to immigrationequality.org. Immigration Equality is the leading LGBTQ immigrant rights organization in the country. Each year, they provide advice and legal services to thousands of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and HIV-positive immigrants seeking refuge, fair treatment, and freedom in the United States. They work every day to ensure the safety and well-being of their community. In nearly 80 countries around the world, it is a crime to be LGBTQ. For this reason, they fight to obtain asylum in the United States for LGBTQ and HIV-positive refugees. Every year, their caseload grows. Nevertheless, they maintain a remarkable 99% win rate. Again, we ask you to head to immigrationequality.org to help this organization out financially or in any other way that you can. This endorsement from us is in no way any sort of endorsement from them. They are not aware of us. We just want to use this platform here to bring your attention to what we feel are good causes. So once again, head to immigrationequality.org.
Star Wars The Phantom Menace was the most disappointing thing since my son. I mean, how much more could you possibly fuck up the entire backstory to Star Wars? And while my son eventually hanged himself in the bathroom of the gas station, the unfortunate reality of the Star Wars prequels is that they'll be around forever. They will never go away. It could never be undone.
If your friends are nerdy and you are nerdy too, I want to talk to you. Friends Talking Nerdy.
All right, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Friends Talking Nerdy. This is Tim Jousman. Next to me I have
Sterling Wilson.
And thanks to the lovely little thing called Skype, we have, calling all the way from New York,
Mr. Noel McIntosh.
All right, today we are going to talk about that galaxy in a land far, far away. We are going to be talking Star Wars movies today. We may be bringing up some of the other stuff, like the cartoons, the books, the radio plays, and whatnot, but today we're primarily going to be talking about the movies. But before we do that, Sterling comes bearing gifts for the audience. Hello, everybody.
Singular.
Okay.
I have a really cool image of a drawing that my friend over at theninjabot.com drew. He's a Portland local artist, and it's a very nice image of Kylo Ren holding his trademark saber with his super cool, super awesome armor.
Nice.
That will be given away for anybody who leaves a 5-star rating on, do we have a particular platform?
Any platform. I mean, wherever you listen, whether it's iTunes, Google Play Music, Spotify, if you have the ability to leave a review, leave a 5-star review, take a screenshot of that and post it on social media. Let us know, of course, so we know to include you in the contest, but by when should we say we should? I mean, it's going to be a couple weeks before this is out anyway, so I would say by Thanksgiving.
Do we want to do the end of November?
Yeah, let's do by Thanksgiving.
Okay.
If you put in a 5-star review and post it up and screenshot it and post it on social media by Thanksgiving, you're going to be entered into a contest to win this exclusive lithograph. We will have a picture of it on friendstalkingnerdy.com as well as our Twitter page and our Facebook page, so you can kind of get an idea of whether this is a contest worth entering or not. But I can tell you from what I see, it actually pretty damn good drawings. So definitely take some time to help us out by doing that review, and maybe you can get yourself a nice little art piece. But for now, let's talk about Star Wars. What I think we should do here, instead of starting with episode 4, let's go chronologically.
Chronologically? In, like, the chronological order we watched them?
Like, no, like episode 1, episode 2, and go like that. So, okay. We'll start off with The Phantom Menace. The first question I'll throw out before we dive into the movie, When that movie first came out, what was your initial reaction? Were you hyped by the publicity going into the movie? Did you like the atmosphere watching the movie? What were your thoughts?
Personally, I was much younger than most people. I think it was, 1999 or 2000? 99. So I remember going to the movie theaters. My dad took us. Because my dad saw the original Star Wars in theaters. He took us to it, and we had tickets, and we got to the show, and we got there like 20 minutes before it opened, and we were in the front row, like just sitting there
with your head craned up.
Yeah. I loved it. It was a great film, like as a kid, because you're not looking at the CGI, you're not seeing the bad acting because you're a kid and you don't understand bad acting. And then there was pod races and some weird fish person jumping around and making noise. And then Darth Maul was like awesome, super awesome. The fighting scenes were a lot more action packed, very quick. There was a lot of good choreography with that. I like the Naboo starfighters. Those were really, really cool. The yellow bananas that shot great lasers. Loved it.
What about you, Noel?
I think there was a little hype because it was like the first new Star Wars movie in such a long time, and Lucas was directing it, and Lucas had control over it, and it was kind of like, all right, this is it's been a moment. So I was living in Los Angeles at the time. I think I saw it at Disney Pantages. So that was like one of the first digital theaters. So the fact that he shot a digital catch there, so it was kind of lively actually. A lot of people dressed up as different characters. They were playing the music in around, and movie starts playing. Galaxy hit a music cue. Everybody starts cheering. You see the scrolling, and then it just got super quiet. No cheers. The pod race scene was kind of quiet. Like Darth Maul, that's probably the best thing about it. But Jar Jar Binks, that whole controversy with that, which was kind of sad. But that really polarized it.
I definitely remember just like sitting as a kid and like I was just like, that's racist. And I was a kid, I'm just like, wow. Because you saw like was it The Adventures of like Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn and all this stuff, and like they had a lot of references to like slaves and this like uneducated speak and stuff like that, and I'm just like, where the fuck is this all coming from? Like, why?
Yeah, Jar Jar, as George Lucas said in all the documentaries leading up to Episode 1, was his big comedy character. If Jar Jar doesn't work, the movie won't work. And, I've never been a fan of Jar Jar. I will never be a fan. I don't find that character as offensive as some people do, but the character is just pointless.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Yeah. In fact, before we go any deeper, in my pirating days, there was actually this video I was able to download called the Phantom Edit, which was somebody went through the movie and edited it in the way that George Lucas, in the way the original Star Wars movies were edited, essentially taking out a lot of the schlock that was put into these movies, and Jar Jar was barely in that movie at that point. And for the Phantom Edit, I actually prefer Jar Jar in that because he wasn't in there too much trying to be funny, and anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, for me, I would say, when I first started hearing about Episode 1, shortly after the special editions were released. I remember being in a movie theater. I was watching Jurassic Park: The Lost World, which horrendously bad movie series, period. But they had the trailer for the special editions. You know, it was like, for an entire generation, you could only watch Star Wars on the television screen. But if that's the only way you've seen it, you ain't seen nothing yet. And just kick-ass music throughout, and it was great from there. And then I followed the movie going into it. You know, I think that was probably the birth of me being as interested in behind-the-scenes stuff for movies and whatnot. So I was definitely excited. But I was living up in Big Rapids, Michigan at the time, which literally is a one-road town. They were lucky to have it there, but it's... I remember the only two things I really liked about the movie was John Williams' music. I think that was some of his best, you know, the best soundtrack he ever made. Mm-hmm. Some of his best work, and of course the Darth Maul fight scene. Having said that, with that Darth Maul scene, there's really, story-wise, and we can kind of dive into that now. Story-wise, there's really no real justification for you as the audience to care about anybody or anything that's going on.
Yeah, the ploy with how Anakin had this super thing in his blood, which was ridiculous.
Metachlorian.
It felt kind of rushed, to be honest with you, but it in some ways, you know, Lucas could have done anything he wanted with it. You know, you see both R2-D2 and C-3PO in it, so you kind of have they have a much bigger history in the film series. Mm-hmm. But for me, I was just kind of like, you know, I wasn't feeling it. I really wasn't. I was like, wow. You know, I left the theater saying, wow, that was, didn't like that. Didn't like it. And
didn't the pod racing scene take years to film?
I don't know.
Maybe. I don't think it took years because they started pre-production. I mean, according to, it was one of the documentaries they had on the DVD. I guess Lucas started writing the script in 94, and then 97 they used, in order to test the capabilities of the ILM special effects capabilities. That's why they did the special editions, and essentially they used that to kind of test some of the computer generated stuff that they were going to do for the Phantom Menace. So, I mean, technically, yes. But I think a real pre-production on the movie was no different than any other movie.
Gotcha.
I didn't know that.
I ended up seeing the re-releases in theaters. Like, those were the first Star Wars films I saw in theaters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too.
Oh my god, that was so awesome.
I loved the original special editions, not the ones that Lucas
remastered.
Well, Lucas, and we'll touch on this again later, but Lucas with the special editions continually wants to add little things. I mean, the one that annoyed me the most was Return of the Jedi for the Blu-ray, where he put in Darth Vader saying no when he picks up the Emperor and throws him down the shaft, when Darth Vader's actions pretty much say everything that needs to be said without. Anyway, what were you already touched upon it, Noel? But after seeing that movie and after reflecting on it in the days, weeks, and months after first seeing the Phantom Menace, what were your thoughts?
I thought the sound work was incredible. That as a former sound editor, I think that was the it was the best. I mean, sound was awesome. So, but I think that Lucas just can do what he wants to do. We were so eager, so ready for it. I mean, when those films came out, it became a printing press. That films, the series started ILM. It changed everything, you know, in film work that we see. And as a Star Wars fan, part of it was the fantasy of an earlier, time. I mean, how did it all start? I mean, my dad was a fan of the books, and the books really went on a whole separate course. I think maybe you know more than I do, Tim, where they really told an incredible, more detailed story about the Empire and the Rebellion. But for us watching it, it was. I mean, like I said, the film made money. It started things going again, but I just wasn't a fan of that film.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the first time that I ever really saw a film or an entertainment property succeed financially and have the audience still hate it. I don't get that mindset at the end of the day. Because Phantom Menace, you got to forgive. That's the first one in years that was going to make money no matter what. But when they continue to be bad after that, for me, you've already touched upon it. It showed me that, especially in something as large as a movie, you cannot have one person have that much autonomy. You have to have. If you heard that, folks, we got a cat at the Friends Talking Nerdy Studios, and the cat just kind of fell off a windowsill.
It was pretty funny.
Yeah, but anyway, the yeah, we entertain easy. But for me, I mean, I think the best movies in the series have been the ones to where Lucas, as the creator of it, has been challenged. And when you have nobody to answer to, when you can put whatever is in your head on paper and then put that script on screen, it's just sad because a lot of it was lazy. A lot of it, the audience is expected to know a lot about what's going on in that universe without being shown it. I mean, in film, the common thing they try to drill into your head is, show the audience, don't tell the audience. What you want them to know, and just a lot of it was just expected, and then little quips too, like at the beginning of the Phantom Menace when they say 2 Jedi Knights are going for diplomatic discussions with these people, and then at the end of the movie, Yoda is conferring upon Obi-Wan the status of Jedi Knight. Yet the film expressly said at the very beginning that he was a Jedi Knight. To quote from the Mr. Plinkett reviews, it's like he wrote the first draft 8 months before the film was set to film, and nobody challenged him, and nobody asked for a second or third or fourth draft. They just took his draft and went with it, and that's really what it feels like.
I agree in a sense. But I'm from a different generation where I was like, this is awesome! Because, this is, the first time growing up with Star Wars.
But you were a young kid, though.
I was a young kid.
And it was bright lights, bright noises, loud explosions, things going on. My point of view is strictly from, at the time in my 20s, now in my 40s.
Yep.
Just think, having the time to think about it, And to be clear, if the Phantom Menace is on TV or something like that, I don't dislike it so much that I'm not going to watch it. To me, it's not like The Nightmare Before Christmas. I will watch this, but it's still horrifically flawed when, they could have had a producer or somebody kind of go through that script and polish it up, because there's just a lot of stuff that don't make sense when you really think about it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think that for Lucas had did what he wanted to do. I mean, and as fans, we have to accept that. It really, for me, if I see it, if it comes on TV, I'll change the channel. It won't get my attention. I think I only saw it maybe last time I saw it. Wow, I think maybe I saw it twice. Yeah, I think that I would say of all the Star Wars films, that's probably the one I have not watched the most. Yeah, that's a straight assessment. I can honestly say of all the Star Wars movies, that one I have not watched the most.
There's a really good cut of episodes 1, 2, and 3 that Topher Grace did, and literally all that you see of episode 1 is the final fight at the end.
Because really, that's all there is to it. Because
best thing about that movie, there's really that fight. That series should have been stitched together. There should have been no break in the middle. For that that's like literally that was worth. Worth waiting for.
Because if you think about it, with episode 2, they clearly established that the events in episode 1 didn't really matter. If you started,
they sparked the trade war.
But again, that didn't lead to anything. The whole purpose of episode 1 was purely to make Palpatine Chancellor.
Yeah.
When all that could be done, what could have happened, if I can speak correctly, was a passing line in episode 2 of Palpatine is now Chancellor. Done. But you don't need episode 1 for the rest of the series to make sense.
I mean, you have an invisible hand guiding the Senate of bad guys.
But again, that still happens in episode 2, because episode 2, at the end of the day, is really just the same story. It's some mysterious figure that we all know as Palpatine, kind of guiding things in the most convoluted, stupid way in order to achieve his point. And it's the same story over again. And that's another thing about the prequel trilogy, is that, especially the characterization is not really that good. There are really no real set defined characters except for the ones that are already pre-established.
One of my favorite things that I ever saw is I watched Star Wars in order 1 through 6 with someone who had never seen any of them. Mm-hmm. So you have this really good progression of Palpatine, and then when they get to episode 4 and you see like the ominous figure and stuff like that, and they're like, oh shit, it's Palpatine, and you're just like, oh fuck, oh, okay. But like, you go into a movie like Star Wars seeing 4, 5, and 6 like repeatedly over and over again, critiquing like the most mundane things. Yeah. And then you go into these movies and you see like someone like Palpatine and like how it's kind of delivered, like when they were like, oh, when I met your father, he was already an accomplished pilot.
But that's the thing, though. I'm glad you brought that up. With Obi-Wan's speech at the beginning of episode 4, talking about his friendship with Anakin Skywalker. In none of the prequel movies is there anything shown that would indicate that they really are friends.
Gotcha.
Apart from, episode 2, when they're going up at the elevator at the beginning of the movie, when they talk about falling into the nest of Gondars, you're told that they had these great adventures and that they're these deep, longtime friends, but you're not, as the audience, you're not shown this, because what happens relatively quickly after that, you see Anakin whining like a little bitch to Padme about Obi-Wan doesn't do this, he doesn't respect me, and you're not shown them as friends. So that speech in episode 4 loses its impact.
You have to take in, like, he met this child at the age of 9 and literally watched him grow up. So in between episode 1 and 2, when you have a 9-year-old and a 14 or 15-year-old,
it was 10-year difference between.
Yeah, you got a lot of window to fill.
But again, that goes to my point with episode 1, that it was not really needed. Episode 2 should have been the start of the trilogy. It still wouldn't have been good, but that's where it should have happened, because the events in episode 1 don't really matter for the rest of the series. Apart from Palpatine becoming Chancellor, and all you need from that is just one line of dialogue.
And what about all the creepy, weird Padme and Anakin, like... Yeah, that's so weird.
That's another thing, too. They expressly say in episode 2 that during that 10-year time span between episode 1 and episode 2, Anakin and Padme never saw each other. And yet, their romance still and whatever.
It was like, hey, I've been thinking about you. Hi.
Yeah, but...
How you doing?
And we'll get into that later. But now, speaking of characterizations, I've mentioned it before in previous episodes, and that is the Mr. Plinkett reviews. Have you seen those, Noel?
No, I have not.
They're from Red Letter Media. I first heard about them thanks to Simon Pegg from his Twitter page. The first one starts off, Star Wars The Phantom Menace is the most disappointing thing since my son. And it just goes on from there. It's really good. But they do one test for episode 1 about the characters, and that test is this. Describe a character from Star Wars without using their name, without describing what they look like. The more detail you can add to that character, the better the character they are. So gotcha. I think we need to try that right now. So Han Solo. How would you describe Han Solo without describing his profession or what he looks like?
I mean, a scoundrel, motivated.
Okay. Anything else?
I think we might have lost him.
No. I'm still thinking. It's to describe Han Solo is you have a skilled person who though serves himself, he sees the greater good in his actions, and he's loyal to his friends.
Okay. How about you, Strong?
I mean, you have a smart, intelligent, crafty, tricky person that's very hard to nail down. And then you have this aspect to him that's very intelligent, but also almost immature and childlike when he has his ego and like a lot of his own personal issues gripping into what he's doing. I mean, I could go on about Han Solo forever.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, here's the next one. Qui-Gon Jinn.
Nice.
Describe that, Noel.
I really can't. I really can't.
He has a particular set of skills. And he is a really good teacher.
Oh man, that's right.
Well, that indicates
his character. Think about that, right?
What?
The name didn't even register to me, and that's sad. I mean, Obi-Wan, yes. Palpatine, yes. Not really.
Liam Neeson.
But
Liam
Neeson is a great actor. That character he played was absolute garbage. I mean, they touched upon it again in the Red Letter Media review, but the character of Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan should have been combined to create
exactly. There was no need for him.
Yeah, you just have
if Obi-Wan could have said that, it would have made him much more stronger in the Force, which is what he should have been. And you just had to extend the character out. That totally makes sense. And if you think about it, there are some characters in that movie that need to be cut. And I think of Neeson's character could have been. I mean, Obi-Wan could have talked about him in soliloquy in terms of what he's done, but the fact that Obi-Wan would be more out doing that makes more sense.
Yep, and I mean, at the end of the day, they only had Qui-Gon in there to introduce the concept of the Force Ghost, which they didn't, even in Episode 3, really explain why. There was supposedly a deleted scene, or a scene in the script that was cut. I mean, it was storyboard and all that, but Liam Neeson was supposed to make a cameo appearance in Episode 3 to Yoda, but did not do that. And, if you're going to cut that scene, that really cuts his whole purpose. But you cut the Qui-Gon character and have Obi-Wan essentially take on both of those roles. That would explain by his actions that he did care for the kid, that he did develop that connection with him early on, so that when the split does happen, it makes a lot more sense. But from the start, Obi-Wan was annoyed. There was no friendship. It was annoyance. He hated the kid.
You got to look at it though. Like Liam Neeson's character with Obi-Wan Kenobi introduced the dynamic of a teacher and an apprentice style. They have that with the Sith. They have that with other characters, and you introduce a trope that essentially lays the foundation of how skills are passed down from teacher to learner, and how you have a character like Qui-Gon Jinn teaching a character like Obi-Wan Kenobi, and then seeing how Obi-Wan is teaching Anakin and how vastly different they are.
Not really, because you could just say Yoda. Yoda taught him anyway. See, there in itself tells you that Yoda could have done that. Obi-Wan had, if you, before the prequels even came out, right? Excuse me. Obi-Wan, mentioned Yoda as his master, so we had no idea about Qui-Chang. I don't want to mess his name up, so I apologize. But that in itself tells you that Obi-Wan could have been skilled enough under the teachings of Yoda, like with Mace Windu, to go do that. So the character itself, even though it's some extension, I mean, if you think about it, it really wasn't needed. It really, if it was just Obi-Wan, it would make more sense because it would add more to his legend about him being a great, about the start of him being, being an incredible general. That would be much more realistic and set the tone up even more.
And you get that in Clone Wars for sure.
Yeah, but that's the sad thing, though, is the fact that it took the cartoons to kind of flesh out those characters.
I was going to say,
very much so.
I was going to say, sorry, Attack of the Clones. My bad.
Attack of the Clones. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Get out. No.
But you're right. You know, even with the cartoon, it explored a side that I mean, I guess we're not going to segue into the Clone War. Attack of the Clones.
Yeah.
When we get into that, it segues into more about the Empire itself and the dealings of the Jedi, which I think kind of starts making it interesting.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Mace Windu because I really think, I mean, Samuel L. Jackson, one of my favorite actors of all time. I still think the only reason they hired him is because he's a much more well-known name than other actors that were probably more appropriate for that role. I think because when you think of Samuel L. Jackson, you don't think of subdued. You don't think of calm. You think of someone who's going to be loud and say motherfucker a lot. And
he has the quiet, burning anger, and you can see that.
But that's the thing, though. He's intense. He's loud. He's extroverted. I would have loved to. I think an actor like Forrest Whitaker would have been better as Mace Windu. What do you think, Noel?
We'll talk. We'll say I think Forrest does a well job in another Star Wars movie, but there's some debate about that. I think with Sam Jackson, Sam is a talented enough actor and great character actor. He can play it both ways, and I think for this, it was kind of it was cool. It really was to see that in there. I mean, Sam always adds gravitas. Any film I see of his is really it's him. He's doing that. It's Sam.
And it's because of
sometimes
Samuel L.
you got to let it go, man.
And it's because of Samuel L. Jackson that we have different colored lightsabers. Because he wouldn't do the film unless he had a different colored lightsaber.
Okay.
I know it takes a lot of the history, like the kyber crystals and how you make a lightsaber, and it puts a lot of other stuff into perspective. And I like it. I liked Sam Jackson in that movie because not only did he have the very composed, quiet gravitas of a person, but when he was fighting and he was in positions where he was like fighting the Emperor, it was very intense. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Well, I mean, with Episode 3, that the last scene with him and the Emperor, that was great.
Yeah.
But when he's on the Jedi Council and subdued and all that, I just think he was miscast in that role. I mean, I think the reason he got the role was he was on Late Show with David Letterman and said, I want to be in the new Star Wars movie. I will do anything. Let me be in that movie. And then he got in the movie at that point. I mean, granted, even a bad movie with Samuel L. Jackson still has some good points. I'm not knocking him as an actor whatsoever. Mm-hmm. He is one of my favorite actors. I just think that he excels with particular type of roles, and the role of Mace Windu was a little too subdued, in my opinion, for him.
And with that, another episode of Friends Talking Nerdies into Books. We thank you all for listening. This is Tim Jasma. Tune in next week as we continue our discussion on Star Wars, going through the rest of the movies here. We hope you enjoyed this episode. When it comes to Star Wars, I will be the first to admit that there has been a lot said about it. And there are a lot of passionate opinions when it comes to Star Wars. Noel, Sterling, and myself, none of us were afraid to give our opinions, but I do think our opinions were tempered with the fact that they are just that, our opinions. So, I hope that's how you all took it as well. I think that any bit of art that goes out, whether it's a movie, a TV show, an album, a book, hell, a podcast, anytime anybody puts out a work for the public to consume, a property like this, it is up for critique. Now, can that discussion head south and turn personal and just be all kinds of level of hatred? Sure, and hopefully that's not what you got from this. But anyway, enough of my rambling. We hope to see you again next week. One thing I want to do right now is give a little love to a podcast I discovered here just the other day, thanks to a retweet from Twitter. The podcast is called Freaking the Fuck Out. It's two ladies based out of the UK. We're looking at Kelsey Bennett and Maddie Scott. The episode I listened to was episode 16. All about periods. No, not the punctuation mark. Periods. And for 48 minutes, I sat there listening and I was enthralled. Why? I have to say, I really, really appreciated how both Kelsey and Maddie were able to talk about a subject that can make some people a little uneasy for whatever reason, and talk about it honestly, and also as a guy myself, put things out there that I did not even realize. I mean, one part of the conversation they talked about was something called period poverty, which I had never heard of before. I wonder why. I don't have to buy this stuff on a regular basis, so gosh, why wouldn't I wonder that? But, doing a little digging after the episode, I found in the United States, for instance, there are only 12 states, including Oregon, thank goodness, that do not tax feminine hygiene products, whereas every other state in the nation does, which boggles the mind. It boggled the mind, but it did open my eyes and make me consider another point of view, which is all you can really ask for in life. There's too much negativity going on in the world. I hope that by, me recommending this podcast here, you'll get a little bit of the positivity that's out there, because there are good people out there and there are good podcasters out there that are putting on good shows. So definitely encourage you all to check out Freaking the Fuck Out, which is available on iTunes and all your other favorite podcast services out there. So give them a listen. I highly recommend it. And once again, we will see you next week.
My God, that hot chick is gone. Now I can let loose my Darth farts.
Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy on iTunes, the Google Play Music Store, as well as Spotify. Remember to support Friends Talking Nerdy on Patreon. Goodbye, darling.